And good morning, friends. Welcome to the Bright Side. I am Pharmacist Ben, and thank you so much for joining us. 844-236-6010 is our number, as always on the Bright Side. If you have comments, questions, success stories you'd like to share, if you want to contribute to the conversation, 844-236-6010 is our number. We'll be talking to Philip Barb at the bottom of the hour. Philip Barb is the author of All the Reasons I Hate My 20-Year-Old Boss and How to Fight Back Against Ageism and Survive a Youth-Focused Workplace. We're going to talk about bridging the educational gap between generations, especially in the workplace, with Philip Barb. At the bottom of the hour, we'll get your calls in our next segment, 844-236-6010. If you want to purchase longevity products, go to brightsideben.com, pharmacistben.com, or criticalhealthnews.com. You can also sign up to join the Brightside Ben team off the websites, brightsideben.com, pharmacistben.com, or criticalhealthnews.com, or you can call 866-735-2470, 866-735-2470 for more information. For a one-time $30 fee, you can be an entrepreneur and be in business for yourself. And if you are an entrepreneur already, or you like the entrepreneur lifestyle, which admittedly is not for everyone, the longevity business opportunity is an ideal entrepreneurship business opportunity. For just a $30 fee, you can get your products at the wholesale price, resell them, and build yourself a business, a home-based business. And now, it's always a good time to build a home-based business, but now especially is a good time with all the economic volatility that's going on in the world. Now is an especially good time to be your own boss and have a home-based business. The longevity business opportunity is something you want to at least take a look at, especially if you like nutrition, if you're hip to the world of nutrition, or if nutritional supplementation has helped you or a loved one. Call 866-735-2470 for more info, or click on the Join the Team link at brightsideben.com, pharmacistben.com, or criticalhealthnews.com. All right, 844-236-6010 is our number. We've been talking about methylation, and I do want to continue talking about that, but I did see something in the news yesterday that I thought was really important and interesting, and I actually want to get your guys' take on this whole thing with the anaphylactic shock and the things that are going on with the vaccine that was just released in the UK. Apparently, a couple of healthcare workers who had a history of allergic reactions had severe allergic reactions to the vaccine, which makes perfect sense. This vaccine has not been tested on, when they tested the vaccine for safety, they didn't test it on folks who had allergies. They didn't test it on folks who had autoimmune diseases, for that matter. They didn't test it on elderly folks. They didn't test it on folks who were on lots of prescription drugs. They didn't test it on folks who had heart disease. Yet those are the people who are going to get the vaccine. So we don't really know what's going to happen. And what I want to hear from you guys is, what do you think about this? Are you going to get the vaccine? I know they're going to be mandating, they're going to be creating ways to, they're not going to be mandating it or forcing people, although they're talking about that actually. In New York State, they're talking about making it, mandating it, making it mandatory to be vaccinated. In Australia, the Prime Minister of Australia talked about making it mandatory. But probably what will happen is you won't be able to do things unless you get vaccinated. Do you find that troubling? Especially considering the fact that the first people to get the vaccine are going to be the guinea pigs. Have you noticed how you don't see a lot of opposite opinions or a lot of differing opinions in the mainstream media about vaccination? It's all just congruent and coherent. It's all just one point focus: vaccine, vaccine, vaccine. What is up? What is up with all this noise about vaccines? Vaccine is not a magical force field that viruses bounce off of. There's so many problems associated with this vaccine. I don't really want to get into each one, but suffice it to say, this is the first time an RNA or a genetic vaccine where your genes, your genetics, not your genes directly, but your genetics, your protein manufacturing properties or mechanisms are going to be exploited to produce viral poisons. This has never happened before. So anyway, I'd like to hear what you guys think about this. 844-236-6010. Now's your time to sound off. I know a lot of people have strong opinions about this, and I'd especially like to hear people who think that it's a good thing. I don't know if any of my listeners think that it's a good thing, but I'd love to hear from people who want to defend vaccination and think that vaccination against a virus that affects 5% at best of the population, that 95% of people aren't even going to test positive, is designed to work on. All right. Anyway, methylation. Methylation. Methylation is like a tinker toy process where a little tinker toy piece is attached to another tinker toy piece. That is, a big molecule gets a tinker toy piece stuck to it, and that activates it. That's called methylation, and that's a fundamental way that the body works. Molecules are activated. This activating process assures a certain degree of control, so things aren't always happening. You don't want all chemistry happening all the time. It has to be regulated. It has to be controlled, and methylation and activation and this whole process where pieces get stuck onto other pieces to turn them on is a way that the body maintains control. Methylation is one of the major control mechanisms. And you don't hear a lot about it, but it's just as fundamental as it's almost as fundamental as antioxidation. It's just as important as antioxidation and oxidation, but you don't hear about it. It's involved in detoxification. It's involved in turning things on and turning things off, particularly in the nervous system and the heart, in the brain and the nervous system as well as the heart. We talked on our last Bright Side episode about SAMe, and SAMe being important as a antidepressant. SAMe is found in high-protein foods. Actually, SAMe is a form of an amino acid that's found in high-protein foods, like meat and dairy and eggs and seafood and legumes, peas and beans and such. SAMe is a methylating agent, S-adenosylmethionine, SAMe. And it was all the rage about 20, 30 years ago. These days you don't hear too much about it. But there's a lot of psychiatrists who understand it because it does have some relevance for depression, for folks who are depressed. SAMe, in fact, SAMe, a lot of people in the know, a lot of psychiatrists and psychologists and biochemists as well think that SAMe is an antidepressant or consider it as an antidepressant. And if you go to the vitamin store or the health food store, you'll see it marketed as an antidepressant because methylation has a protective effect on brain cells, and methylation is very important for the production of important brain chemicals, i.e. neurotransmitters. Depression is unfortunately very common. 1/4 of Americans, 1 out of 4 Americans is going to have an episode of depression sometime in their life. And without an ability to methylate, that likelihood is higher and depression can be worse. Without effective methylation, SAMe, and other methylating agents, neurotransmitter brain chemical levels will decrease. Serotonin will decrease. Dopamine will decrease. Norepinephrine will decrease. These are upper, if you will, or at least mood-enhancing neurotransmitters. Dopamine's involved in excitement for life. Serotonin is involved in handling life. Norepinephrine is involved in get up and go. And all of these neurotransmitters will be in decline or at low levels without effective methylation. This is where SAMe comes in. All right, I'm Pharmacist Ben. 844-236-6010 is our number. We shall return on the bright side right after this. Okay, we're back on the bright side. 844-236-6010 is our number. Philip Barb will be with us at the bottom of the hour, and we'll be talking about his book, All the Reasons I Hate My 28-Year-Old Boss, How to Fight Back Against Ageism and Survive a Youth-Focused Workplace. That'll be coming up at the bottom of the hour. We're talking about methylation, the idea that certain chemicals are activated by the attachment of this methyl group, especially true about neurotransmitters. By the way, genetics or DNA can actually be methylated in order to turn it on. And as a matter of fact, methylation and methyl groups being those little tinker toy pieces, are considered to be epigenetic factors. They control genes, and aberrant or incomplete or excessive methylation can actually be associated with genetic diseases like cancer. In fact, this is why whenever anybody hears somebody say, well, it's just in my genes, it's in my heredity. My mother had diabetes, so I have diabetes. My father had cancer, so I have cancer. My grandfather had Alzheimer's disease. It runs in my family. The reason I have a problem with that is because it does not take into account the epigenetics of the DNA. DNA is turned on and off, and methylation is part of this epigenetic phenomena. In any case, methylation of neurotransmitters can affect brain health, can affect depression. It can cause mood problems. It's because the neurotransmitters that are involved with enhanced well-being are activated by methyl they need to be methylated. And if you have poor methylation or deficiencies in methylation, not only do you tend to be, you may be depressed, or you may be just not feeling as well as you might, but if you have some kind of methylating issue, you may not be responsive to your antidepressant drugs, especially your SSRI drugs, your serotonin reuptake inhibitor drugs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor drugs, because if you can't methylate serotonin, it doesn't matter if you're taking a reuptake inhibitor like Prozac or Effexor or whatever SSRI that you happen to be on. I remember when SSRI drugs came out in the late 1980s, when Prozac first came out. It was the first time you could take an antidepressant and not feel sluggish. Most antidepressants would knock you out. In fact, that was the only strategy for antidepression or for antidepressant activity before Prozac. They would just have to knock you out, basically, with drugs like Elavil, which does not elevate you at all. It knocks you out, also known as amitriptyline or tofranil. These are the old-time antidepressants. Sometimes people are still on these drugs, trazodone. Sometimes people are still on these antidepressants, the older style ones. Any case, if you have an MTHFR deficiency, likewise, if you have an MTHFR deficiency and you're dealing with depression and you have a methylating issue and your Prozac isn't helping, or if you want to get off your Prozac or you want to reduce your dose of Prozac, throw in some SAMe. Throw in some methylating agents. So other methylating agents, of course, vitamin B6, vitamin B12 are also methylating agents. And speaking of the B vitamins, niacin is an awesome antidepressant, especially for the kind of depression that's associated with anxiety. Niacin has anti-anxiolytic properties. We've talked about niacin a lot on this program, and case could be made it is the most important of all the vitamins. It's hard to say what the most important vitamin is, but I will say that niacin is the only vitamin that the body will make under deficiency conditions, although choline, which is vitamin-like, is also made under deficiency conditions. There's also an important relationship between choline and homocysteine, vitamin B4 technically. Eating choline-containing foods and supplementing with choline, taking 100, 200, 500 milligrams of choline as a supplement can be an important homocysteine-lowering strategy. If you're depressed, you suspect methylation problems, even if you don't, just take choline. Choline's great for the brain. Choline's great for the nervous system. And choline is a precursor to a methylating agent called betaine. Man, is betaine underappreciated. Choline is a methylating agent basically because it is converted into betaine, and betaine may be the most underappreciated, underrecognized nutrient that you can take supplementally anywhere in the health food store. I hesitate to call it, I don't really know what to call it, because you don't really, it's a nutrient, we'll say. It's not an essential nutrient, but it's because the body can make it, but it's a nutrient. It's not a vitamin, it's not a mineral, it's not a amino acid. It kind of stands on its own. And when you talk about betaine typically, and when I talk about it typically on this program, I'm talking about Betaine Hcl. Betaine Hcl is a type of betaine, and you'll see it on digestive supplements. Betaine Hcl is mostly about the HCl, not the betaine, because it's an ideal delivery system for HCl when people have HCl deficiencies. HCl meaning hydrochloric acid. HCl is the chemical abbreviation for hydrochloric acid. Betaine HCl is betaine plus hydrochloric acid. The digestive system is very, very dependent on hydrochloric acid, and as goes the health of the digestive system, so goes the health of the body. So if you have a hydrochloric acid problem, as in too little hydrochloric acid, because most people don't have too much hydrochloric acid as a problem. We'll talk about that here in a second, because that's another misunderstanding. If you have too little hydrochloric acid, that's called hypochlorhydria or achlorhydria. If you have too little HCl, you're gonna have health problems that domino effect all the way downstream from the digestive system. Everything from autoimmune problems to allergy issues, to digestive health issues, to bile issues, to absorption of nutrient issues and subsequent malnourishment issues, to skin issues. I mean, there's all kinds of health problems that are going to happen if you have this condition that many people have. And as we get older, I would venture to say most people have. And so taking HCl with your meals can be very helpful because it can help you break down your foods. Now, you can get a doctor to write a prescription for HCl drops, which is not a bad idea. You take 3, 4, 5 HCl drops, hydrochloric acid drops, put them in water, and you drink it with your meals. And that's not a bad idea. But if you don't want to do that, you can take HCl capsules as betaine HCl. Betaine HCl is found in most digestive enzyme supplements, so you could buy straight betaine HCl. And you're going to get not only digestive health benefits, you're going to get skin health benefits, especially if you're achlorhydric, you have low hydrochloric acid. You're going to get skin health benefits, you're going to get immune system health benefits, you're going to be more resistant to allergies. Plus, you'll digest your foods better, and you'll have better absorption of minerals and the B vitamins. A whole bunch of good stuff will happen. HCl breaks down proteins. That's one of its jobs. It has a protein breaking up effect so that proteins, smaller pieces of protein like amino acids and peptides, can be absorbed into the system. If you don't have enough HCl, these proteins don't get digested properly, and what can end up happening over time, especially if we're overall unhealthy, is those proteins, those small pieces of protein, they're called peptides, can enter into the bloodstream, and this is where autoimmune diseases begin. In fact, I would say the number one reason for autoimmune diseases is incomplete breakdown of proteins plus their leakage of these peptides into the digestive system, or into the circulatory system. All right, I'm Pharmacist Ben. We'll be back with Philip Barb right after this break. Don't go away. We are back on the bright side. I am Pharmacist Ben. We're on the air Monday through Friday, 8 to 9 Pacific, and 10 to 11 Central Time, and 24/7 on the archive page at brightsideben.com and benfuchsarchives.com. Thank you to Peter in the UK for setting that up. If you want to purchase longevity products, you can do so at brightsideben.com, pharmacistben.com, and criticalhealthnews.com. You can also sign up to join the Brightside Ben team off the websites, and make sure you take a look at our Truth Skin Health products at truthtreatments.com, especially if you're looking for a Christmas gift. We've got some Christmas specials running. Actually, we have a couple specials running at truthtreatments.com. Never any preservatives, fragrances, fillers, waxes, emulsifiers, water, silicone, vegetable oil, nothing your skin doesn't need or doesn't want in any of our Truth Skin Health products, all formulated in my compounding pharmacy for wound healing. Wound healing equals beauty. Thus our 1,400 4- and 5-star reviews at truthreviewed.com, truthreviewed.com, and check out our products at truthtreatments.com, truthtreatments.com. Okay, I'm looking forward to speaking to our guest today. Philip Barb is the author of the book, All the Reasons I Hate My 28-Year-Old Boss and How to Fight Back Against Ageism and Survive a Youth-Focused Workplace. We're going to talk to Philip about the gap, the generation gap they used to call it when I was a kid. These days, the generation gap is between millennials and boomers, or millennials and Xers maybe, and now a soon-to-be new generation gap between Zoomers and boomers. Please welcome to the bright side, Philip Andrew Barb. Hey, Philip.
Hey, how you doing? Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much for being on. You know, I've been checking out your work now for a few days, and I noticed you don't talk a lot about the Zoomers.
No, you know what, man? It's been an interesting year, as I'm sure everyone realizes, right? And it's like I think a lot of people are, trying to get back into the workplace with a lot of things. So,
what do you think about this younger generation that's pre-millennial?
I think that there is, one of the biggest things for me is always understanding that each generation has their own, they've got their own personality. They've got their own things that they're interested in. They have, we are like not, a lot of times people want to just ignore any of the differences. And you can't do that, right? We are different people. We grow up in different times. However, I think it's just being able to appreciate that, when you're going to be working with people that are so different than you, it's easy to just start really looking at all these differences and, oh, I wish they were like this and they should be like this. Should, if only. And I think the best thing we can do is put ourselves in the shoes of everyone else that we're working with, see what motivates them, where are they coming from, what are the things that their biggest motivations for what they're looking to get out of the workplace experience, and understand, hey, we've got differences, that's true, but the stuff that we are, we're all just trying to make our money, do our thing, progress our careers, have fun while we're doing it. We've all got a lot of the same driving motivations. I think the more that we can just, highlight the areas where we definitely are more similar, I think it ends up benefiting a lot of workplaces in general.
What are the qualities of this whole boomer millennial adversarial relationship that seems to be developing? What are the qualities of each group that accounts for that?
Well, I think you see a lot. Like, I'll speak a little bit to the stereotypes, right? Because one of the biggest beliefs that I think that, as I was doing a lot of research with these things, the stereotypes are there, but it's, there is a laziness that exists in the stereotyping, right?
Mm-hmm.
We
mental laziness, like a mental laziness.
100%, right? Like, we're totally human, and we do it because it's easy to, put people in boxes. But so I always like to start with that, right? So we'll talk about the stereotypes, but I never let these things be something where it's like, these are the rules, right?
I 100% agree with you. There's individual differences that have to, you don't want to stereotype too much, but it's valuable, has a certain value to it.
Definitely, right? So there is, the baby boomers, obviously, you have a generation that, at the age now are looking to probably be moving out of the workplace, right? So there's a lot of, there's always the longing for the way that things were. There, there's always the lack of the desire. I won't say the ability. I will say the desire to make massive amounts of changes. Things have been done a certain way for a long time, and they don't necessarily always want to, grab all these new changes as they're getting ready to kind of moving out into the next stage of life. Then I think you have people that are, even in that age range now that are kind of that almost what they consider the young millennial, right? Like I'm 34 years old, and I'm in the old millennial category, which now we're breaking up even millennial categories into different categories. Yeah. And I think, you see a lot of times people are, you see this huge difference between, the Gen Z, more millennials not wanting to be looped in with the Gen Z.
Really?
Millennials.
Well, hang on. Hold on. I want to get that. I want to digest that. So you're telling me now there's an adversarial thing happening between the millennials and Gen Z?
Oh, definitely.
Okay, that's interesting.
You see it a lot. And here's the thing. We call it adversarial, and like, who now you've got, the 20, a 24-year-old doesn't want to be, a 24-year-old doesn't want to be considered 20, right? Like everyone wants to, I think the fascinating thing you find is we are such a society of individual. We all want to be so individual and seen as an individual.
But that's a millennial thing. But that's a millennial thing you just said. And that might be your perspective, that we all want to be seen as individuals. I think it's less true about older folks. I don't know about the young folks, but I noticed that with millennials, it's really important. Go ahead.
Well, it is important, but also, the one thing I'll say is, you see a lot of that massive swing that happened between, that huge individualism. Like, that started with the boomers. That started with the coming out of that silent generation that went through the Great Depression, that went through World War II. They come out of that, and then you had all the baby boomers that were kind of building through that rock and roll era, through that 1960s, through the independence of the country, through the civil rights movement. And you did have a society that was, hey, long hair don't care, right? And I think you see that where it's easy to look and be like, oh, that's that generation that's rock solid that didn't want to change. That baby boomer generation was a very, very counterculture generation.
Yeah, it was.
In a lot of ways. And,
right.
And there's almost a part of it where you go, is it the generation or is it being in your 20s? Right? Is it?
I get that. So millennials today, though, they don't want to shake up the world like we did. I'm a boomer. I'm like a very late boomer, but I'm a boomer nonetheless. And I was steeped with this idea of shaking up the world. Do millennials have that?
Right. Like, I think you get some people where, they say it's so much of a lot of the driving force now is, people are just looking at, the one thing that I'll always say that I love about this is I think people, you learn when you have access to things. And I feel like, in a way, the new generations have such an access to other styles of life, right?
Yeah, right.
If you want to grow up and you want to have a husband and a wife and a kid and the picket fence and you can build that life for yourself.
If not, you don't have to. There's all kinds of alternatives.
Exactly.
It's like alternatives, like a key word for this sort of generation. I'm not sure if it's millennials or Zoomers. Philip, we got to take a break. I want to talk about empathy when we come back. This whole idea of empathy and leadership and relating to the other generations using those skills. All right, I'm Pharmacist Ben. We've got Philip Barb with us. We'll be back with more of Philip Barb on the Bright Side. Okay, we are back on the Bright Side. We're talking to Philip Barb. His book, All the Reasons I Hate My 28-Year-Old Boss. Philip is the co-host of the podcast Front and Center, and he's also a producer, I guess. Philip, is that right? With Netflix and YouTube and CBS?
That's correct.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
You're doing a lot of stuff for a young guy there, Philip.
Well, I always joke with people. I go, hey, man, I'm single and 34. I got nothing but time.
Okay, gotcha. You know what? Enjoy being 34, buddy. You're in the prime of your life. Really enjoy it. So, All the Reasons I Hate My 28-Year-Old Boss. I love that title because it reminds me that sometimes older folks like myself have to be in a position subordinate to 28-year-olds or 30-year-olds or 34-year-olds who are now taking over leadership roles, and they're sometimes leading over people who are older than them. That seems to me like it creates the potential for a lot of problems. How can how can a leader deal with that using empathy, like you say, and then also how can a subordinate deal with it as well? How can a subordinate deal with having to take orders from a 28-year-old?
Definitely, right. And I think it's something that, I was always, one of the reasons that I kind of got into writing the book was I was always obsessed with age. I was always obsessed with where do I need to be by this age and what should I have by this age. And, I allowed that, age can sometimes be such, it's almost like, like tent poles of our life that we think that we need to be somewhere. And so that was one of the things where I was so fascinated when I was doing a lot of the research and putting this book together. And it really was a thing where, it's a tough pill to swallow for a lot of people. We're so raised on, the whole idea that, you'll get the keys to the castle with time and, get into a company. I'm originally from Detroit. And so a lot of the guys that I grew up with, their parents, they were people that worked at GM and they worked at Ford and they worked in the plants. And it was that, hey, you're going to get in, you're going to work, you're going to keep your mouth shut, you're going to work real hard, and you're going to have a pension at the end of this 25 years, 30 years thing, but you'll get more, responsibility as time goes on. And we've now entered, a lot of careers where that's not the case. I think, they even say this younger generation, they have a big stress that they're not millionaires by 22 because they've grown up seeing, the tech world, the Zuckerbergs, the athletes that they look up to, the 23-year-old person making, $100 million a year.
Interesting. What did you see? What was a seminal event or series of events or historical period for you that affected your worldview as a 34-year-old?
Well, you know what? I think one of the biggest things that really shifted things for me was, as I was a kid going through life, had the normal insecurities that a lot of people did, and hung out with a lot of older kids. And just as the way it did, I was the youngest kid on my block, and spent a lot of time with older kids. And that ended up leading into, as they started experimenting with fun substances as they were 16, 17, 18. I started when I was really young. I ended up getting into a decent amount of trouble as a young man in Metro Detroit. And I ended up, had a couple of incidents running with the law, and I ended up getting sober, actually. The state of Michigan thought it was probably a good time for me to no longer be allowed to consume alcohol. And I kind of started joining into, treatment programs and 12-step. And one of the amazing things that did for me was I was such a kind of egotistical kid, as you just are growing up. And walking into meetings with people inside of the recovery community, And being able to sit across the table from a 55-year-old, a 65-year-old, a 75-year-old, and have them express emotions and feelings and things they were going through that I was experiencing as a 22-year-old, it was very, I had always been raised to respect my elders, but it's like, I respect you enough to where I'm not going to push you down the stairs. I didn't think you really had anything for me. I'm 22. I know what I'm doing. And it was once I really started getting access and shutting up and listening to people that had life experience, it really is what helped cut down that generation gap for me personally in my own life. And so one of the things that I always try to talk with people, whether it is someone that's a little bit older in the workplace that's dealing with someone that's younger, or the flip side, when I have people that are, a lot of times I'll talk with the 28, the 32, the 34-year-old boss who I just can't seem to get them on, they don't listen to me because I'm young and it's like, well, are you listening at all? Are you listening? Are you building a connection? Just because you have a title or you make a little bit more money doesn't mean that you don't have massive amounts of information you can learn. And this person is a huge resource for you. They have the experience. And I think a lot of times we get so caught up in the roles of who am I supposed to be? What is this job supposed to be? And we get so caught up in that a lot of times it's like, hey, be quiet, talk to people, listen, see what their real thoughts are, their genuine thoughts, really connecting. There's nothing that says that, obviously at the end of the day, when you hit the chain of command, right, there's going to need to be someone that makes a decision, and that's what needs to go forward. And it can't be always up for debate, and that's fine. But we should step into a lot of decision-making situations in our lives and work where the first thing we do is let's find out all the facts. Let's get all the information in front of us before we start just harping orders or putting our head in the sand and saying we're not going to listen because this person is, X, Y, or Z.
It sounds like what you're talking about is leadership.
Well, yeah, I think I think one of the difficult things that you do see is a lot of times when you did have this normal trajectory in a workplace where people would, you're making slow incremental movements forward, you're picking up a lot of these leadership skills from the leaders that you have. And so over time, it was just, you were picking up these skills that allowed you to be a better leader as you went forward. What we're seeing now is a lot of times you are getting a 24-year-old thrust into a situation or a 28-year-old or a 32-year-old, and they haven't had the time to really have somebody pour and, dig in on that leadership. They haven't had a lot of the life experience to be able to get there. They haven't, they haven't read the leadership books, right? Like I always joke with people, I'm like, read the parenting books, read the books. If you care enough about something, you want to be a good parent, read parenting books. You want to be a good friend, read books about being a good friend. You want to be a great leader, read books about being, studying other great leaders. But I think that's something that we end up seeing is people get put into these situations that they might not necessarily have all of the skills yet for.
I was about to say, it seems like young leaders are at a disadvantage and they actually have to obtain skills, like go out of their way to obtain skills. They can't let it diffuse in via osmosis because they're so young. And that's where the resentment comes from. So a young leader has to really motivate seems to me, to get skills at whatever they're leading, in the subject of whatever they're leading.
You know what? And it feels like, a new thing, but, you go back and you read like Dale Carnegie, right? Like How to Win Friends and Influence People. And in there, so much of it talks about checking your ego as a leader, making somebody think that the idea is theirs or just it's listening. And I think that there's a lot of stuff that we get caught up in and we think it's the most monumental new thing and it's so precious in 2020. And humans are humans. And we've been humans for years and years and years. And so I think that there is a part where it's like, can you listen? Can you see what people want? Be able to really listen to someone's motivation. What's their driving force? What are they? Some people just want to show up and get a paycheck. Some people because they got other things in life going on. Some people want to. Some people are so motivated and the career is number one, and they want to push that forward to where they can start to miss a lot of the interpersonal connections that you can be making. And I think we all have massive amounts of strength, and we also all have some level of weakness and areas of improvement. And I think the more that we can appreciate that about ourselves, we can appreciate it about our workers, whether that's your boss or whether it's somebody that is reporting to you. When we look at people, we realize none of us are perfect. We're all going to make mistakes. And it's like, how do we lean on each other, and how do we build a support system or be the support system for other people as we are helping nourish people to be the best version of themselves in the workplace?
Philip, you're doing some great stuff for a millennial, a 34-year-old. That's really awesome that you're motivating to do all this stuff. I really appreciate it. Hey, what's the podcast about, Front and Center?
So Front and Center, Jackie Jordan, who is the queen running the thing. Man, it's so much fun. She does a great job of putting together a lot of amazing guests. All of us are from behind the scenes of the entertainment industry. So she does a great job we always bring on guests that can talk about fun stories from either entertainment, but it's always, so many people are they have their careers, and then they're building amazing things outside of it. So we try to really capitalize on great stories, great things people are doing, and if no one gets anything other than having a great time while listening to us, that's all that I can ever hope for.
Philip, thank you so much for being on The Bright Side. Appreciate the book, All the Reasons I Hate My 28-Year-Old Boss, Philip Andrew Barr. Thanks for listening to The Bright Side, friends. Have a wonderful, awesome, beautiful, spectacular day. I'm Pharmacist Ben. We'll talk to y'all later. Bye for now.